Today I'm doing a bit of a ridiculous test. I'm testing this against this. Now you might be thinking, Mike, this is a bit of a stupid test, but there is validity to it, and I'll tell you about that a little bit later on. But for now, I'm kind of wondering which we're going to record with on the bike. I'm thinking this one. All right, let's go. Whilst we're riding to the location, let's talk about weight. The Feiyu Tech is a tiny little unit at 127 grams, whereas the AK2000C is 1078 grams, the A6600 is 503 grams, and the 17 to 28 is 420 grams. So that's almost a 1.9 kilogram difference. When you're traveling, having something that you can take out and just shoot with is really important, and something that gives you a bit better quality stabilization than a camera phone is absolutely fantastic. Now, to be completely transparent, I've been sent this little gimbal by Feiyu Tech, but they have no say in what I talk about. So these are my opinions about this camera. Whilst on the way to the point we were going to, we spotted a paraglider, and I tried the digital zoom out on this gimbal. Now, it isn't brilliant, to be honest, so after this little test, I won't be using this feature. When I was using it at the fully wide angle and it was using the whole sensor, it was a much cleaner shot, and this is kind of to be expected. So now, one thing with these big gimbals is it does take a while to set up. Why are you wobbling? I don't know why it's doing that. I've calibrated it. So you can see setting up a gimbal like this takes a lot longer. If you do get problems with it, you need to know how to troubleshoot those. Whereas with the Feiyu Pocket 2, all you do is this, turn it on, and start recording. So the one good thing with this is when you press the joystick, you can lock the shot into place. So now it sits, it won't move. However, when it turns to the right, there is a stopper. If I lock it, so it says lock mode on the screen, I get to here, it's locked. So that will take it round. That's just one of the annoyances with it. I wish it had been a 360 gimbal, which would have been 10 times better. So straight away, if you don't have your big camera in a semi-automatic mode or an automatic mode, when you go into darker areas, that's when the Feiyu Tech's really good. It just straight away, it auto compensates. Now, there are advantages and disadvantages to this. The disadvantage is if you're filming a shot going down, you do have to stop and change the exposure. I forgot my variable NDs, but if I had a variable ND on there, I could turn that to change the exposure. But that's just one thing to think about with these two different gimbals. Filming in a tropical climate where we're walking through getting bitten by all kinds of bugs probably wasn't the best idea. There's no one about, so I'm going to take my mask off. And it's very hot. Filming with two gimbals is a little bit tricky, and it's around about 35 degrees, so I am absolutely boiling already. Carrying this, you do burn a lot more energy, and your arm starts to ache a lot sooner, obviously because it's so much bigger. Whereas filming with this, you could pretty much film with this all day. You could have it in your pocket or anything like that. The other thing with the big gimbal, you've got to have a big camera bag for it, because if it rains, you don't want it out in the rain. With this, you stick it in your pocket, stick it in the little case it comes in, and it's hidden away. That's the thing. Sometimes you just want to go out and you want to enjoy the day, but you want to film that day as well. And that's where a gimbal like this is invaluable. This is how quick you can pack the little Feiyu Pocket 2 away. And it goes straight in your pocket. Now for packing this away, this isn't the biggest gimbal you can get, and you can get some really big rigs, but there is a bit of weight to this, and when you've been using it all day, it is pretty knackering. I'm going to put it in my bag now, and I'm going to carry on with the Feiyu Pocket 2. So even though you get much better quality with that bigger gimbal and that better camera, there are a lot of downsides to that. From having to change your exposure when you go into darker places, having a big camera bag to carry it about in, and also the strain it is on your arms. And basically, you're going out for a day of filming, not going out for a walk or going out for a hike. With a little gimbal, you have it in your pocket, take it out, you film, you can walk around with it, and then you can put it in your pocket and it doesn't get in the way of the day out that you're having. So we're finally back at the bike. It's really hot and I'm really glad I had the Feiyu Pocket 2 because it's tiny. I lugged the Feiyu AK2000C back into my bag so I wasn't carrying that, and it was still a little bit hot for it, but it was a really good hike nevertheless. But I'm looking forward to getting back home. As for audio, you do need something like the H1N because the audio quality isn't great. I'll switch it across in the edit to the audio that this gimbal is recording right now. So you can hear it's not great quality and it's quite quiet as well. If I switch that back to the H1N, it gives much better quality, and all I've got is this lav mic here. So that is one thing to think about when you are using this for a vlogging tool. It is really good though, because that, when your arm's outstretched completely, with that super wide angle, you don't need to stretch your arm out that far. Now, as I've already said, the Feiyu Pocket is great if you just want to go out, enjoy your day, and get a few shots of that day. That isn't that horrible shaky footage that you might get with a camera phone or an older GoPro. And that's the beauty with this system. You can literally fit it in your pocket and go. It isn't the best in low light and you can't get those shallow depth of field shots, but for something to record your day, it's fantastic. Also, when you're filming with it, you don't have to worry about your settings if you don't want to. You switch it on and start recording. And with a little bit of practice, you can get some really steady, kind of cinematic looking footage. With these bigger systems, you do need to know how the camera works to get the best out of it. You need to know how to balance the gimbal when you put the camera on it or when you change a lens. And you need a fair bit of strength as well, especially if you're filming throughout a whole day. Now, the image quality is obviously going to be a lot better with one of these big systems, but you have to be a lot more patient and to dial in those settings to get what you want. And there's a lot more things to forget. Now, I actually forgot to bring my ND filters with me, so I was shooting with a super high shutter speed. But this kind of matches what I was getting with the Feiyu Pocket 2. Whilst we are on the subject of image quality, it does look okay, and it's similar to a lot of the action cameras on the market at the moment. It does seem to sharpen the image quite a bit though, and I couldn't find a setting to dampen this down. So it would be good to see this in a future firmware update. It does 4K in 24, 25, 30 and 60 frames per second. Slow-mo up to 120 frames a second in 1080p and up to 240 frames a second in 720p. It also does time lapses and panos, all the usual stuff that gimbals do nowadays. Talking of the field of view, that angle is 130 degrees, which is really wide, although it does bend the horizons like the GoPros when you point it down and when you point it up. Now, as for weight, it weighs 127 grams, which is next to nothing. It also has a thread on the bottom, so if you have some of these little tripods, you can very quickly just thread these onto the bottom. So I have those on the bottom that I can use, and then I can also use that as a bit more of a handle. Now, whenever you have a gimbal, you do want one with a joystick because it makes it easy to point the camera exactly where you want it. So having that little joystick to be able to aim and angle that camera is fantastic. And while we're on the interface, this screen is a touch screen. So you pull it down and you have all of the different features, and then you push it up and then you choose between your pan mode, your follow mode, and your lock mode and your all follow mode. If you swipe left, you have photo, video, slow-mo, time-lapse or pano. So you can very quickly access everything with this little swipe screen. Another way you can control the gimbal is through using the app, and it's pretty handy and connects through Wi-Fi without needing any Wi-Fi add-ons. The Wi-Fi is built into the gimbal. Also, there are pro settings, so you can set a flat profile to color grade afterwards, and you can shoot completely in manual mode if you want to. With something like this, I just prefer to head out and shoot without worrying about any of the settings. Now, like I've already said, this is a bit of a ridiculous comparison, but it does show that the image quality is pretty good in these little cameras. Now, there were a few things that I didn't like about this gimbal, and one of them is that it's not a 360 gimbal, so it does have a limit when turning the gimbal to the right. Every now and then it would freak out a little bit and end up pointing down or up, or basically at a weird angle. And this seemed to happen when I'd forget about the gimbal, I'd have it turned on, but I'd be holding it down by my side, or I'd be getting something out of my bag and I'd put it in a strange position. But all this took was turning it off and on again to sort it out. And when he did turn it off and on again, it would just go back to that normal static position. Now, the camera doesn't handle lens flare too well either. It did end up being just a big purple blob coming around the sun as that sun crept into the shot. And as it is a really wide angle lens, it can capture that sun in your shot quite quickly. As for audio, they do supply an audio add-on for it, but if you're a vlogger, I think the best way to do this would be to get something like the H1N and a mic and sync it up afterwards. It's a shame it didn't have an onboard preamp with mic jacks built in, so you could just literally plug a lav in and go. So even though this was a pretty ludicrous test against the AK2000C, it shows that a small gimbal is a great tool for capturing those moments where you might not want to carry a big camera and gimbal about, or you might just want to go out with your mates and get some shots of the day without being the Steven Spielberg of the group. And sometimes this little thing will do just fine. As for the price, it retails for $359, and there is a promotional price for a short time after the release date. So if you are interested in this, click on the link in the description. Now, if you like this video and want to see more, click on this one next, where I show you some quick tips to speed up your video editing. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe for weekly videos in everything photography and videography. I'll see you next time.